You have two paths. You can be the destroyer of this world. Or you can be its savior.
Hey guys, welcome to Real Entertainment. Today we're here to talk about Black Adam spoiler review and discussion, and really just talk about both the pros, the cons, and what is the potential future that we see and that we might want for the DCEU moving forward. To start off, let's talk about the pros. To begin with, I thought this movie had pretty good visuals overall, especially for Dr. Fate, and in some moments, Black Adam looked really great, especially when, he had the lightning look in his eyes, the similar kind of look that you see with Thor, and I think they both look great when they have that kind of look to them, the lightning all over them, the lightning eyes. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it, but it looks awesome. I thought that looked great. But I do think visually, Dr. Fate was the standout. Not only the costume design, but the special effects on him I thought were pretty damn good. I thought Hawkman also looked solid. Cyclone looked all right. I didn't really love the design of her, suit, but she's a character I really don't know too much about, so that's not something I can complain about a whole lot. Maybe it's comic book accurate, maybe it's the best they could do with her suit. I don't know, but she looked okay. Molecular Man, I actually thought he looked pretty solid, especially when he was big, when he was large. Um, and I imagine it's probably a lot easier to do the special effects on his suit as compared to a character like Ant-Man, where his suit's, a bit more detailed. But, with that being said, I thought Molecular Man looked pretty damn good, especially when he, became large. Next, I'd say another pro would be the action. I thought the action ranged from decent to good, and it got better towards the end. I gotta say, I didn't love the action, but like I said, I thought it was decent to good. But with that being said, I really can't wait to see Superman, Shazam, and Black Adam all on screen together, especially if there's a good or great story to accompany, you know, them being on screen together, them being on film together, because the kind of action scenes that you can just imagine in your head with those three characters together is just, man, like I can't wait. Another pro, which is also kind of a negative, con, is, I'd say about 30% of the humor worked for me, which is obviously, that sounds more like a con, but the humor that did work, I enjoyed. I'd say probably the best joke was, if I remember correctly, Molecular Man accidentally smacking Hawkman. That was a pretty good moment. So I'd say about 30% of the humor worked for me. And didn't make me laugh out loud or wasn't super hilarious, but it was okay. Some of the humor was okay, but obviously, as you can see when we get into the cons, I'll talk about the other 70% that didn't work. Another pro I would say is the film itself had decent to good ideas. For example, humanizing Black Adam to make him more relatable to the audience, although the execution wasn't great. Having Black Adam and Hawkman have different ideals to each other about killing and not killing. That concept itself is a decent idea. Was it executed well? Unfortunately not, but it could have been worse. But it could have also been better. And having Dr. Fate essentially be the voice of reason in this film, anytime there's arguments, which a lot of the arguments were, really kind of half-assed, half-baked. But, like I said, some good ideas, but not quite executed well. But having Dr. Fate be the voice of reason was a great choice, I believe. And Pierce Brosnan not only plays the character well, but plays that role, plays that, the mediator, the voice of reason kind of guy. He does that very well in the film. And I like having him be the person to get Black Adam to say Shazam towards the end of the film and come back and kind of save the day. I thought that was a very good choice, and probably one of the things that was executed fairly well in the film. Another pro I have to say, and one of the best pros of the film, was Dr. Fate just in general. I mean, I thought he was the best character in the film. I thought he was the best acted. I thought he was the best written. I thought he was the best performed and the best visualized, and that means the design of the character and the special effects. Dr. Fate was definitely a standout. Very good idea to have him be in this film. If you're gonna have the Justice Society, um, it is very intelligent decision to have him to include him in this film, because he was a standout and definitely upped the quality of the film, the level of the quality of the film. Now let's get into the cons. My main con with this film centers around the writing. That seems to be a main problem with the DCEU in general, is the writing. At least for me, most of the time when I'm watching these DC films, the writing just bugs me. Whether it's the dialogue, whether it's the story, whether it's the story structure, or all three. That seems to be the main issue, and that all comes down to writing and partially directing as well. That definitely plays a part in it, but that was my main issue with this film. And let's take a deeper dive into that. For one, having the son and mother character in this film, and even some of the side characters that were related to them, it only worked for me for about 40% of the time. The other 60%, I was very much annoyed, especially because the son, I can't remember the name of the character, but he just wouldn't stop talking, you know. And you listen, to be fair, has the MCU had characters like that in their films that just won't shut up and keep trying to be funny or witty or something? Most definitely. It doesn't work in those films, at least most of the time, like a character like Darcy from the Thor films and WandaVision. I mean, I don't hate that character, but when you watch her character on screen, sometimes you're just like, would you please shut up? And there's other characters like that in the MCU. And I think even in the DCU, I want to say there's been some other characters like that, but um, yeah, they could have toned that character down a bit, I thought. But I didn't think he was terrible, but still, they could have toned him down, because he got annoying at certain points. But let me just say that I understand completely what they were going for with the mother and son character. And a lot of people who have reviewed this movie have pointed this out also. Very similar to Terminator 2 with Sarah Connor and John Connor, and the relationship that John Connor has with Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator. You know, trying to take a character that was a villain in the first film, and in the second film, humanizing him a bit, even though he's a cyborg robot, whatever you want to call him, right? Cybernetic organism, right? Humanizing that character, and they tried to do something similar here. Where you have the Rock as Black Adam, you know, anti-hero, vigilante, somewhat villainous kind of character, somewhat, ruthless or whatever, and sort of trying to make him at least a little bit more heroic or understanding of, human beings and everything. I understand what they were going for. It just wasn't executed nearly as well as I would have liked, but I at least appreciate the intention. Um, I don't think they necessarily had to do it this way. I don't think you necessarily needed these side characters, these human side characters, but I do appreciate the intention. I think if it would have been executed better, I would have liked it a lot more. Didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. It was very kind of in between. Another con of this film was the jokes. As I stated a little earlier, only about 30% of the jokes landed for me. The other 70%, unfortunately, just did not. And it mainly came down to the timing of the jokes. What they did in this film which kind of bothered me, is because kind of kind of takes you out of the film, is they would set up a joke, and instead of letting it marinate and then having a satisfying payoff later on in the film, the payoff happens like a minute or two later, and it's like, jokes are all about timing. You can't you can't do it that quickly. You have to let a setup of a joke and a joke marinate and then have it pay off satisfyingly later on in the film. And they were just setting it up and paying it off too quickly to the point where it just wasn't quite that funny. It was maybe chuckle worthy, but you're like, and again, I appreciate the intention of a lot of these jokes, but the payoff just wasn't quite there, unfortunately. So that's another one of my, cons, was the jokes just, you know, did not quite land. And I think they slightly overdid it. And again, it's hard not to compare it to the MCU. You know, the MCU also has an issue of overdoing the humor a bit. And again, I appreciate the intention of both the MCU and any superhero film that decides to include humor in their films, because the point of it is essentially to try to make the characters, to make these larger than life characters, these godlike characters, seem more human and more relatable, But the problem is if your jokes don't land, it can take you out of the film. And the more jokes that you have in a film like this, the higher chance there is that, you know, they're not going to land. So I say keep the jokes to, I guess you could say, a minimum. And, I mean, humor's not easy, but do your best to make sure that they're, actually funny. It's not the easiest thing to do, especially because somebody in the editing room could mess up the timing of a joke. But that is definitely one of the cons of the film, are the jokes. Another con I would say is Cyclone and Molecular Man were kind of useless and pointless in this film. They really didn't add too much, but I guess to try and give them the benefit of the doubt, they weren't really that much of a detraction that I'll make that huge of a deal of it. But I still have to include them as a con just because they were kind of just there. I found in Molecular Man, again, his jokes didn't always quite land for me, but he did have one of the bigger jokes in the film that did. Again, didn't make me laugh out loud. It was more of a chuckle, but the joke with him and Hawkman, and the chemistry between them two worked. It worked well enough. Another con I had with the film, another problem I had with it, was the story structure, and more specifically, the story itself. The story itself was kind of average. Wasn't good, wasn't bad, could have been executed a lot better, but I will say that it was serviceable enough. There was things they tried to set up and tried to have kind of like a shocking reveal. For example, spoilers, as I said, the fact that Black Adam wasn't given the powers directly from the wizards. His son was given the powers and decided to make the sacrifice of saving his father when he was hurt and injured. And I liked that concept. I liked that idea. I thought that was interesting. Just could have been executed a little bit better. The story structure, the editing, and the directing is to blame for that. But it wasn't terrible. It just could have been. It could have been better. That seems to be a running theme throughout this whole film. There's not a whole lot I hate, but there's also not a whole lot that I love. It's just kind of just, it's average. Maybe in some ways slightly below, in some ways slightly above, but I'd say it teeters out to be average. In closing, the best part of the film, in my opinion, I think most people are going to agree with me on this, and I think most people are talking about this, already, even before the film came out, because I believe The Rock himself is the one who leaked the information about Superman being included in this film. Essentially, he will return, Henry Cavill will return as Superman in future projects, and I guess in his own solo film, which is pretty good news. I'm a fan of Henry Cavill's his version of Superman. Not my favorite. That still goes to Christopher Reeve, but I do like Henry Cavill as Superman, and I like his suit. especially because it seems these days they've made it a little bit more brighter compared to how it looked back in Man of Steel. So, I'm optimistic about him coming back. Let's just hope. I just really hope um, that they have competent writers and directors. I'm not sure if they're going to bring Zack Snyder back. If they do, I won't. Listen, I'm a Zack Snyder fan for the most part. Although he certainly has movies that I don't like. One of them being Army of the Dead. I really, really did not enjoy that film, as it was one of those movies similar to Halloween Ends, where the trailer shows one thing and makes you think that the movie's going to be this way, and then you watch the film and it ends up being something completely different. You know, um, but for the most part, I am a Zack Snyder fan. I really love his Watchmen film. I really love 300. I love Dawn of the Dead. It's probably my favorite or one of my favorite zombie movies or zombie projects. Whether it's a show, video game, movie, it's one of my favorites. I thought Batman v Superman was decent. I thought Man of Steel was good. Solid. And I thought his extended cut of this Zack Snyder cut of Justice League was actually pretty damn good. It surprised me. I can't call it great, but it was pretty damn good. It surprised me. I honestly didn't think it was going to be as good as it was, especially how bad Joss Whedon you know, butchered that film. So with that being said, I'm going to be cautiously optimistic if he is included and if he returns, um, to direct a Man of Steel 2 or any future projects in the DCEU. With that being said, if he does come back, I just hope that he has competent writers with him to work on the project, because that's been my main issue with the DCEU and even MCU as of recent. Some of the recent projects they're not quite up to par. I think a lot of people would agree with that. I don't hate any of their really recent projects, although I will say that She-Hulk, I can't say I hate it, but I close to hate it. It had 2 or 3 episodes I enjoyed, especially the Daredevil one. But yeah, let's not even go there. The writing is extremely important with these superhero films. Both Marvel and DC need to. It's imperative that they invest in intelligent, competent writers. Just take a look at the Dark Knight trilogy. Take a look at the Spider-Man trilogy, well, at least the first two. The same thing goes for the Dark Knight trilogy. The first two were the best written. And take a look at Marvel's best films, Captain America: Winter Soldier, for example. These are all very well written films. The dialogue, the story itself, like we need that kind of writing back for superhero films, for comic book films. It's what's been lacking in a lot of these projects that have come from DC and Marvel as of late. So I hope that we can get that fixed in the very near future. And more specifically, with whatever project Black Adam and Superman are going to appear in the very near future. Because come on, I would love to see him, Black Adam, Superman, and Shazam on screen. I mean, who doesn't? Let's also talk about the end of this film, Superman's return, Superman's cameo. Now, I want to compare this cameo, this mid-credits, end credits kind of scene, to the one that we got in the very mediocre film Morbius, where we see Vulture, who's in a universe that he has no business to being in. If you saw the most recent Spider-Man film and you remember how that ended, everyone got sent back to their respective universes. So why the hell is Michael Keaton's Vulture in Morbius's universe? Makes absolutely no sense. And what he says to Morbius at the end of that film is completely idiotic. The whole scene, the whole cameo makes no sense. Now, Superman's cameo here although a little forced, we get it. Listen, I'm excited. I would like to see these characters on screen as well. But there has to be a compelling reason for it, not just, oh, hey, Black Adam's powerful, Superman's powerful, they have a similar power set. There has to be a little bit more of a reason than just that. And I think I thought that the scene was actually pretty good. Not great, but definitely better than like 10 times better than what we got with Morbius. Essentially, from what I gather, from what I'm understanding, Amanda Waller is the main reason. She's going to be the problem. I'm assuming maybe she's going to instigate, Superman and Black Adam fighting. But maybe if they do, whether the next project that Superman returns in is going to be a film where him and Black Adam go at it. Like, is Black Adam going to be in Man of Steel 2? Or is Henry Cavill's next Superman project going to be titled Superman versus Black Adam? Is it going to be similar to the animated film that had, Shazam and Superman fighting Black Adam? I'm not sure. I look forward to seeing, what route they're going to take, um, what the story is going to be. It's not 100% clear, by this cameo, what is going to happen. But again, it's much better. It's a much better potential setup and than what you saw in something like Morbius. Um, but listen, I look forward to seeing Henry Cavill back. Uh, Another con I have to more pros I have to say about this film is that I thought Aldous Hodge did very well as Hawkman. I thought The Rock did fairly well as Black Adam. I think I look forward to seeing both of them, you know, much well written, better well written, or better written in the future, by more competent writers. That's my hope. But I definitely, as I said, I thought Dr. Fate was the best written in the film, and the best character. With that being said, if I had to give this film some type of grading, I would probably give it a C plus or B minus, somewhere in that range. It's not a great film. I hesitate to call it good. I would just say it's like average or slightly above average. Um, I enjoyed it. Not to sound cheesy here, no pun intended. But speaking of Superman, I do have hope for the future of the DCEU. This movie honestly did give me hope. Um, and I look forward to seeing Black Adam and Superman on screen with each other. And like I said, I just hope a good story accompanies it. And we certainly have to see Black Adam and Shazam go at it. I'm surprised there was no speak of him at all. No reference to him, as far as I can tell. Maybe there was a missed Easter egg. Um, but I look forward to the future of the DCEU. I just hope they invest in better writers. And honestly, they should do just fine. Their universe should be just fine if they have better writers. The visuals are good. The action is decent to good. The acting is decent to good. Um, the costume designs are pretty good, I'd say. We just need better writing, better story, better dialogue, and you're good to go. This universe can be competing with the MCU, and it should be competing with the MCU, especially with so many of these characters being as iconic as they are and as well known as they are. There's really no excuse that it's for it not to be competing at this particular point. But we can get this train back on the tracks, and I hope they do. As I'm just a huge fan of superheroes and comic books altogether. I try not to have any bias towards one or the other. Um, if it's a well written character, I like it. It's really that simple. So, with that being said, I look forward to seeing the future of the DCEU, and I look forward to seeing them have success because the fact of the matter is, if both Marvel and DC are putting out great films, or at least very good superhero films, That's great for us fans. We get our money's worth, and it's great. Competition is great. It is. It really is a good thing if both DC and Marvel are doing well, because it'll make both of them stay on their toes. Oh man, Marvel's going to be like, hey man, DC's doing well. That means, we cannot get lazy with our films and having competent writers. We like it's going to be better in the long run if DC gets back on their feet and consistently puts out good movies. And as I said, I can't say this enough. Get better writers, and they'll be good. That's my personal opinion. That's my solution. Please get better writers. And you'll be great. So that being said, I enjoyed the film overall. I look forward to the future of the DCEU. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did or didn't, please let's discuss it in the comment section below. I look forward to seeing and hearing everybody's opinion, and I will be replying back to as many people as I can. Um, you know, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. We're going to be covering a lot more movies and shows in the very near future. We may also be covering some music and video games on this channel in the near future as well. But just look forward to mostly shows and films in the future. Thanks for watching, and have a good day, guys.